we go in 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You guys know that there's no guest on the show today because we go all out on the 5, 6, 7, 8. There's nothing worse to me than having to like look a guest in the eye and count.
And do 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
Oh,
we didn't think that one through at the beginning when we added it. And then now we have these like really amazing guests who are like really accomplished and we have to dance and I move while you sing 5, 6, 7, 8 and it's embarrassing.
You know what makes me so happy though is like when the guest wiggles around and like gets into it and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like,
yeah.
Oh man, for anyone that's new, this is the Smart and Public podcast. It's a podcast that we talk about business, careers, life through the eyes of PR and comms experts. I'm Katie Boyson.
I'm Katie Duffy.
And here we go. First of all, let's dive into this. We both were not raptured. Did you hear about this? I don't know if you're... Okay, so for anyone else not following along, on the 23rd this week, there was supposed to be a rapture. You were supposed to either wake up in the gates of heaven or wake up here. And
where's here? Like on
here
Earth?
Is like, yeah, on Earth, like facing, like essentially like you're damned.
Okay, sure.
We weren't raptured. And I'm not surprised, to be honest.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even know what raptured means.
Really? Like you've heard of like the rapture of like the like when what is it, Armageddon, like the forward like of the apocalypse come and you start to see famine and the locusts and I don't know how I know so much about this. Like what is this chapter in the Bible?
I don't know. Why are you asking me?
Revelations. Boom.
Got it. Look at that Bible knowledge coming through.
Oh my God, I know. So someone was forced to go to Sunday school until they were 13, let me tell you. But yeah, so the rapture is how about this? Have you seen This Is the End with Seth Rogen and like where everyone gets
a bell. Yes, it's ringing a bell.
And it has a Backstreet Boys song in it, and the Backstreet Boys come down. Anyway, so...
yes, I have... Yes.
That's essentially the rapture. And then everyone else is left to, like, go to hell on Earth.
That was supposed to happen this week.
On Tuesday. Didn't happen.
Well, you could have given me a heads
at least, as far as we know. So, like, if...
Or it has, and you and I are just left here.
Are we just living in, like, in some weird glitch in the Matrix? Or, maybe. Maybe like on Saturday, the locusts start coming in, like we start seeing the signs.
I feel like this is a really good example to listeners of the types of conversations that Katie Boyson opens our life with. This is what working next to Katie Boyson was like in the office. You'd come in and you'd be like, hey, how are you? Good morning. And she'd be like, yeah, so we were supposed to be raptured. And you're like, wait, what? But hey, there you go.
Anyway, so here's what we're going to do today. So we're going to do 2 hot takes today. We were going to do 3, but we're going to postpone one of the topics until we can get actually somebody that knows what the fuck they're talking about in terms of like the pharma industry. Obviously, we're talking about what's going on with Tylenol right now and what's happening in the media. We're going to have somebody that actually knows. We really tried to do it, you guys. And, it's just...
I don't want to speak from a place of not understanding how all those things work.
And I do. And so that's the real problem is like...
Listen, we have opinions. It's just we don't want a whole hot take, which is just me ranting. So, yeah, we're going to get someone who knows what they're talking about to actually talk about kind of, how that would have all gone down at a brand like Tylenol. So we'll do that. But not
what we are going to do today is Jimmy Kimmel and what's going on with that and freedom of speech and all of the kick-ons and what's happening around like the conversation from both parties and all of that. So we're going to talk about that. And then Devasy is going to walk us through, which I was not aware of being in my American bubble, but the Optus 000 kind of PR comms crisis that happened there as well. So we're going to get an international, we're going to dance across the Pacific for these 2 hot takes. Swim.
Swim. Yeah, probably swim. Yeah. It's pretty far.
I'm going to dance while I swim. Okay, so let's get into Kimmel, all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do
I'm
this.
ready.
Let me get my notes. Okay, so let's start with what actually was said. So this was on the
Yeah.
15th of September, a mere 10 days ago from when we were recording this, and some 5 days later of when this goes to air.
Yes, that's right.
So just
It'll
keep
still be
that.
current. It'll still be current. It's
You guys
fine.
just keep that in mind too. Whenever, just give us some grace whenever we
Yeah.
do these.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Kimmel came out on the show, and this was, of course, after Charlie Kirk, who is a MAGA kind of political leader, podcast host, like very religious kind of side of the conservative right. It was murdered while speaking at university in Utah, and it was it the same day or was it like not the same day?
I don't
I
think
should have looked that up.
yeah, very
Jimmy
close.
Jimmy comes out on the show and quote says, "We hit some new lows over the weekend." Oh, it was over the weekend, so it was like a Monday or something. Okay,
Mhm.
we've got it, folks. With the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than the one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. And then he also joked about Trump's response to Kirk's death, saying, yes, he's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. So I want to pause and just kind of talk through those kind of comments as a standalone. Take the political sides out of it. Like if we tried to like remove ourselves from the emotions and the sides, like is that an acceptable thing to say? Like how what does late night commentary look like from
I
that
think
perspective?
that it's yeah, I think it comes down to like my first instinct is like, yes, it is. That doesn't mean you have to like it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. And to be fair, the first quote, he's not making a joke, he's making a comment
Mm-hmm.
about what the right is trying to do in terms of, the individual. The second one was the joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he kind of because they have the clip of Trump being like, look at my new ballroom that we're building at the White House when they ask how he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that fourth stage of grief is construction. That's the joke, right?
Right.
That's and I feel very strongly that comedians have a role to play in kind of calling out the absurdity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's what he was trying to call out is like, this is a horrible thing that's happened. This is the president, and he's asked how he's doing, and he's talking about construction,
Right.
And so I think that's what he's trying to do. I think, sure, should there, can there be a bit more humanity? Probably. Maybe some of that could have been couched a little bit differently, but like as a general rule, I feel like, yes, that it wasn't a news program. It's not,
Mhm.
reporting it's a late night talk show,
Yeah. I can understand why people would be so pissed off about it. Like it was
Yeah.
on television. People saw it happen live, like
Yeah.
streamed on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
It was shocking. It was just fresh, maybe. I don't know. And I think also because it was Charlie Kirk, who is so polarizing in the first place, and like that was by design. Like he loves to challenge the status quo. He loved to talk about really hard conversations and lean on, prove me wrong, I think was something that he used to always say. Like, I just think it's just such a hot, emotional person. There could have been a gut check on that one, and they still went for it. But that also, to your point, is what late night is all about. Like, think about all the jokes about Bill Clinton. Think
Yeah.
about all the jokes, about Barack Obama. Think about all the jokes,
Yeah,
about
Biden when he was aging, and they were doing like taking all the different like weird things he would do when he was like sort of towards the end there.
Oh,
Like
totally.
I think, I think probably fresh is right, and so abhorrent in what it actually was in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, to your point, in front of people, highly public. There's video that exists. Like I think all of that stuff creates an environment that is highly sensitized. But I just think we're getting into a dangerous place because he didn't say anything offensive about Charlie Kirk,
Mm.
and he didn't, praise whoever did it. There was no like endorsing of the actual act.
Yeah.
It was a commentary on how the politicians were then using what has happened to form an agenda. I mean, that's what he's saying in that first quote, is like they're using it to score points. Someone should be allowed to say that. Whether you agree with it or not, someone should be able to call that out if that's what they think is happening in that position. And that's my belief, is we have to be able to call those things out. And then you can switch off, you can not watch, you can not agree with him, you can switch networks, you can stay wherever you need to be to not engage in that. But I don't believe that he doesn't have the right to call it out.
Here's also, I think, from like a vibes perspective, why this feels so to people as well. With the, you know, government official who was murdered, like with Trump's attempted assassination, with this happening now with Charlie Kirk, like the political violence, I think, is really scary to a lot of people as well.
That's a good point.
And so I think that's the other thing,
Not
is like,
trying
what
to
is
incite more of that?
Yeah, well, it's not like, maybe it's more sensitive because like we can't laugh at it right now because it's like
It's literally
people are sitting and thinking like, can I go to am I safe at a rally? Am I safe to like
which is
go
horrible.
protest for women's rights? Like, what is next with this scenario? Because I mean, it all comes back down to like, there are guns here, you know? So I think that.
Well, I mean, I feel like, you know, I mean, I said this to you the other day, but I feel like there probably isn't still, and this is just the Australian in me, I know that, but like at the heart of all of this, I'm like, still kind of the core issue is a gun and access to a gun and availability and like, you know, and I think, but I totally hear you that the climate right now is highly charged around these violent acts. And to your point, like there's fear around showing political views, showing up at things, you know, having a different view.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if anyone has listened to any of our other episodes and you can kind of hear us treading lightly on our language, like it's just such a sensitive topic too. Like I really want to be able to talk about this stuff on the podcast and dissect it from like a comms perspective and really be bipartisan and like look at everything from almost like a business lens or like a, you know, like almost like like the aliens looking down, trying to figure out what's happening. You know, I think that's really important. But there's just a vibe right now that is like feeling so heavy and weird. Okay, let me go through the escalation with the FCC.
Yeah, so then he says the thing, what happened?
Yep, he says the thing. Sorry, we got stuck in one spot, and that's literally like the first two bullets on like all the million pages I have. So let's speed it up. Okay, so September 17th, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr called the remarks some of the sickest conduct possible and threatened that there's a path forward for suspension over this. According to CBS News and CNN, Carr said, "We can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way." And Ted Cruz compared this to Goodfellas mob threats. So on the same day, Nexstar and Sinclair, so the major station groups, pulled Kimmel from their ABC affiliates, PBS, Fox News, and Disney suspended the show, quote unquote, indefinitely. So that's kind of how all of that escalated and what happened. And I don't know if you saw Squawk on the Street, where they interviewed Brendan Carr and like asked him about the remarks. Shout out to Squawk on the Street. It's like how I wake up every day. But it was really interesting to me in that interview because they were asking about the remarks and like even quoting him in saying like there's a path forward, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way, asking him specifically about like what does that mean. And his response was leaning back and saying, well, you know, Jimmy's had really bad ratings for a long time, and like going back to the ratings. And I found that to be so interesting because it was so obviously not answering the question and going to like a business, like a numbers perspective. And so from a comms perspective, I was like, oh God, this just like, people are so over people not answering the question. So you have to be able to back what you say. Like, especially in that capacity. And I just feel like that's such a good comms takeaway. And I'm going to dig into that. I asked some comms communities that we're a part of like, what do you think of this? And there's a really good point that listener brought up that I want to read too about that.
Like, I feel very strongly that we have to be careful about censoring the media, and that just because you don't like what someone says, you know, that's a slippery slope, I guess, is how I feel. Is I think it's hard to draw a line around. I think it's hard to, you know, decide who gets cancelled and who doesn't, what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And if one person is dictating that, you know, at the top, and it's, you know, one-sided, so the other side can say whatever they like, but if it's against, you know, a particular party or a particular person, I think you're entering into a world where it isn't a free press. And I think you have to decide, what do you want for your country, and do you believe in a free press? And I'm not saying this just happens in America, by the way. It happens here and it happens in other countries too. But I think it is an interesting trend. And I think the speed at which they did that is quite, and to your point, then blaming it on ratings, which might be true too, but like, it definitely wasn't just that.
Yeah.
You know?
If you're thinking about it from both sides as well, I think the other side could potentially argue that, like, look what happened to Charlie Kirk. Like, he was just saying what he wanted to say, you know, and that's freedom of speech, and he was murdered for it, you know? So I think, like, there's something happening here, and that's what I mean by, like, the vibes are off.
And if that's where the country is at, that's scary.
Yeah.
On both sides. Like, if we're at a point where people can have the certain views that they have, and then that means they get killed in a public space, that's horrendous. So what was the, like, the turnaround?
Okay, so he had his monologue when he came back, and there were nearly 8 million YouTube views by mid-morning, like the next day from watching it. Yeah. The usual number, just for reference, is like 1.8 million TV viewers. Yeah. So, but he's still blocked by 25% of markets where Nexstar and Sinclair refused to air The Return, which is interesting as well.
Right.
But, you know, he comes out, it's a very kind of emotional monologue. He talks about, you know, it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. He talks about Kirk's widow. So Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow. He also, you know, thanked unexpected conservative supporters, so like digging in and kind of saying, like, these people are with me, you know, in a
because didn't a few of them come out, like, and basically say, like, I don't agree with him, but I don't think we should be,
like Ben Shapiro, Clay Travis, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. He thanked all of them, and then he kind of turned the tables on the ratings. You know, he said he tried and did his best to cancel me, instead forced millions of people to watch the show.
What did Disney say about the decision to put him back on?
Let's see.
It's quite the reversal of the decision, right? It was pretty quick. Like, it was like, he's off and now he's back on.
And I also don't think that anyone's really been brought back on before either, which is quite unique. Disney stated that they suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live to avoid escalating tensions during an emotional moment for our country, and called Kimmel's comments about the Charlie Kirk shooting ill-timed and thus insensitive. After thoughtful considerations with Kimmel, the company decided to reinstate the show, a decision also influenced by significant pushback from celebrities, policymakers, and consumers.
I think they also lost a lot of people canceled their subscriptions very rapidly. I think I read something about it was one of the, like, biggest drops they'd had in like a 24-hour period of people just canceling their subscriptions to Disney.
I'm just looking up the numbers now. Listen, these are things that I should have probably looked up before, but what are you gonna do?
Do it live. I like it.
We're doing it live. So since the decision to suspend Jimmy Kimmel Live, the share price of Walt Disney & Co. dropped by 1.9%, resulting in a $3.87 billion loss. Though this drop coincided with the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live, it says there's no direct link between the two. That's interesting. But here, other articles are saying like $4 billion, over $4 billion. So, I mean, a shitload of money is the answer to that.
And I think that's where it gets interesting, right? Where we talk about, like, let's leave Kimmel aside for now.
Yeah.
If you're talking from a company perspective, if I'm Disney, right? Okay, you've got this issue. Everybody's mad at Jimmy Kimmel. Potentially there is a ratings thing as well. and then you have this pressure to cancel.
Mm-hmm.
You then do that, maybe against what you want to do, but you do it. Then you lose a significant chunk of revenue and your share price goes down. Plus people are complaining, politicians are calling you out, like, and then you have to reinstate. And it's like, you've not held any value there then.
Yeah.
You've flip-flopped, right? Like, either hold true to that's not who we are and that was insensitive and he doesn't belong on the air, or he has our support. I think the broader issue at play, and just like how I feel about the whole thing, is this slippery slope of trying to control the media in saying anything negative about, whether it's like, in this instance, it's this administration. That worries me, because I think hopefully in a democracy, you can have healthy debate. But I think where America's got to is maybe you can't at the moment.
Well, and that's the kick on that we were just talking about. So recently, what we've seen is Apple's postponed the launch of Savant with little explanation, which is the either movie or series, on Apple TV about fighting white supremacists, starring Jessica Chastain. She's come out and talked about how she's super unhappy, obviously, about this.
Yeah.
But it was because of the nature of the content, people are assuming. And so where does the line get drawn? Like, I mean, we were talking about, there's 9/11 remake movies. There's like all of these movies that talk about real stories and like controversial moments in history. And this is just like a show. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a show.
Yeah.
I think this is where it kind of, media becomes propaganda. Media becomes a tool to send a message. Like, and I think, that's just a scary place to be. Plus, there's the financial side of it behind, because I think there's also some influence going on from what I read in terms of like some of the conglomerates and some of the mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that can be blocked and things. So there's like reasons why some of these media companies are really fearful, because they could lose out massively. And there's a lot of influence from the government on some of these deals. So like, I think the media is in a really hard place in America right now. And I think that's, like, so he's, how many publications has he sued now?
Yeah.
And yeah, and again, this is not necessarily unique to America, but there are markets where this is already exists, right? Where it's government controlled media. There's very limited access to, objective kind of, or opinions about the government. Personally, that's not a country I want to be a part of. I want to have a free press. And so I just think it's something that the American people need to decide where they're going to fall on it.
Yeah. There's been a lot of chatter across the comms community, and I put some feelers out there so that we could see what other people were saying and how they were feeling as well. I have an anonymous response right here, which we love.
Ooh, I love anonymous.
But this person says the biggest loser on the Kimmel move is Nexstar. So they were an under the radar B2B brand that is now a household name, and this will put them under greater scrutiny in the home stretch of its merger with Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
This person goes on to say many viewers in the markets that are still blocking the show are angry and may now regard Nexstar as the Death Star.
Oh. Wow.
Which made me lol.
I enjoy that. I enjoy a good Star Wars reference.
So I asked this person, like, so what's a recommendation? Like, what would you do? Or what does this happen moving forward? Yeah. And, Nexstar Comms will need to prep a strong Q&A for potential Democratic congressional testimony. So, just big stuff. Yeah. Here's another one from our friend Rachel. Yeah. So the expectations heading into Jimmy Kimmel's return Tuesday night were astronomically high. So the misstep he risked further alienating audiences. So from a communications perspective, his monologue sure as heck delivered. It struck the perfect balance of emotional without seeming inauthentic, funny without seeming tasteless, passionate without seeming belligerent. The lesson here is be prepared to defend anything and everything you say, which I completely agree with.
Yeah.
not only from Jimmy's standpoint, but from, what's his butt from the FCC too. So
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
and that doesn't apply just to talk show hosts. Like brands and their executives
Yep.
also need to be ready to defend anything said on a corporate Slack channel. Great point,
Yep.
Rachel. In a town hall meeting, in a media interview, and whether it's
Yep.
prepared or off the cuff. And she says, I'm not suggesting you always need to double down on what was said. You can elaborate, even apologize if you got it wrong,
Yeah.
but you need to recognize that sound bites can be and will be pulled and used out of context. You can't avoid that. And it's something basically everyone needs to be prepared for right now.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Nailed it. Nailed
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I think she's right about the monologue. Like, it could have gone either way, and it was a masterclass in how to deliver that. And the lesson for executives is like his humility, his openness, like his true authentic emotion as part of it. Like,
Yeah.
those are all really powerful. And I
Yeah.
don't think we see enough of it in executives fronting up for some of these things that happen.
Totally. And that's something we talk about like with vulnerability and thinking
Yeah.
about what that looks like. And we were
Yeah.
talking about that with Christy in the last episode as well. But
That's right.
totally agree. So that's Jimmy. It's got everyone stirring around on the internet. If you guys have any other thoughts on that or you want to write in and share, we're more than happy to kind of relay those
Yeah,
as
let us
well.
know.
Davisi, do you want to lead us into Optus?
Let's do it. It's probably a good segue that we're talking about humility and vulnerability with executives. So let me just kind of give you the lay of land. So Optus is one of our telecommunications companies here in Australia. It's owned by Singtel, which is a Singapore business. Optus has had a bit of a tough run. It's had a couple of issues in the last couple of years. It's gone through a couple of leadership changes. So it's not, as a brand, it's had a bit of a tough run. Mostly of its own doing, but it's had a bit of a tough run. So what happened, and that's just good context because I think it's kind of, for a lot of people, it's sort of a build up to what has now happened.
As an American, Davisi told me about this and she was like, "Ooh, should we talk about this?" And I was like, let me look it up. And then there was like 3 other things that came up and I was like, this one, this one, this one.
Yeah.
She's like, nope.
Yeah, exactly. So they're been fighting a bit of fires over the last, and they've changed CEOs fairly recently. From a comms perspective, they got a new comms person in December last year. So quite a big change through management as well. So on September 18th, in the middle of the night, Optus were upgrading a firewall as part of their usual processes. As part of that upgrade, it has now come out that through human error, they didn't do the right thing as part of that upgrade. There's some processes that they didn't follow, that they needed to follow as part of that upgrade. But that was at around sort of, middle of the night, like let's call it 12:30, midnight, whatever. So at about 2 a.m., customers in Western Australia were unable to reach 000. 000 is our 911. It's our emergency services line. And so that's kind of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. if these customers can't reach 000. At about 9 a.m. in the morning, people contacted the Optus call center, which is overseas, offshored, saying, like, alerting Optus that they can't reach 000 through their network. None of those calls were escalated at that point. That's at 9 a.m. And then a customer at about 1:30 in the afternoon contacts Optus directly, locally, to let them know about the outage and that they can't get through. At that point, that's when the CEO was made aware of this issue. And then around a similar time, the South Australian Police contacted Optus to say that there'd been, so Western Australia was where the initial, then South Australian Police contact Optus to say that there's some issue with 000. So does South Australian Ambulance Service alerts them as well. The firewall update was stopped and then it was apparently restarted, and the Optus said the service was back up and running. So this is all kind of about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh my God.
They have an obligation when they have an outage to alert, we have a communications minister, they have an obligation to alert them to this fact. So they do that at 3 p.m. To the minister. And at that point, they say it's affected 10 calls, 10 000 calls.
And by affected, you mean like these people could not get emergency services?
Yes, correct. They couldn't get through to emergency services. Then in the evening, that's when welfare checks start.
Oh my God.
Remember,
my
there were
butt
people
cheeks are
calling.
clenched this whole time. You're
Yeah,
telling me
people
this.
were calling from early the previous morning, 3 a.m. or whatever. They get a little bit of criticism for how long it's taken to get to that point. They say they've had trouble pulling the records from the network, i.e. knowing, who they need to be checking on. Then Optus that evening says to WA Police they believe it's now 26 calls, and they start doing welfare checks, the police do. So we now fast forward, we're into Friday now, Friday, September 19th. And then they've now informed the communications minister that it's 100 000 calls that had failed. That was at 3:40. At 4 p.m. they then advise her it was 600. I'm just reading the facts at this point.
I'm so sweaty listening to this.
Okay, so then at 4:45 on Friday they announced they're going to do a press conference at 5:30. Okay?
5:30 on a Friday?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
And at this point the media don't know. Like, they're just being called to a press conference, right? So then close to that press conference, WA Police, so the Western Australian Police, informed that one person has died. So they know at least one person has died. Sorry, previously as well, they've been informed of 3 other deaths. So they think it's 4 at this point. That's kind of where they believe it's been. So then they do the press conference and he confirms that 3 people have died. And this is the first time the public hear about the outage, and it's 5:45 on the Friday evening. At 7 p.m, the South Australian Premier holds a press conference, and he basically says that Optus has not told the South Australian government about the deaths before the press conference. So they've not alerted the government to this fact. Mm-hmm. And then at 9 p.m, Singtel, which is the Singaporean holding company, puts a statement out just about the fact that they're investigating the 000 failure. But interestingly, they do it at a time where the stock exchange is closed. So the markets aren't open, which is, I think, an interesting decision. And then it continues. So basically it goes through the weekend. They hold multiple press conferences. They've since announced, he then announced an independent review into what happened. Mm-hmm. They pull out the fact that it was human error. They we have an authority that looks into, so it's called the Australian Communications Media Authority. They are now looking into it. It has become an absolute shit show, as it should be. And so I think, interestingly, that's happened. Concurrent to that, they are being investigated by the ACCC, which is our consumer watchdog, for fraudulent kind of behavior in terms of selling products to people who couldn't possibly make the decision. So people who are intellectually disabled, selling them a full plan, things like that, really dodgy stuff. They've been fined $100 million for that. That court case is literally happening at the same time that this is happening. So that's what's happened.
Yeah.
What's really interesting about it is, so he had to front multiple press conferences. And his name's Stephen Rue. Mm. There's kind of 2 things I feel about it. I think he, as a leader, I think could have shown a lot more humanity, a lot more vulnerability, a lot more warmth in acknowledging the role that a telco plays in that is a fundamental service that needs to operate, and it didn't, and people died. And he does say sorry, and he expresses all of that. Mm-hmm. I think they're somewhat bound by a legal framework that they have to operate in, because obviously they're going to be legally liable for some of this stuff, and there's probably going to be court cases down the line, and so there is a fine line that they have to, but I think he could have shown a lot more of that. What I think is more interesting is the fundamentally broken processes of the business.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a rough go. Because, is this the CEO's fault? Not entirely, no. But, is he responsible for, wearing this and being able to message this and, understand who his right stakeholders are? Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's one of those good messages of like, you can be a really strong CEO, but if your business is shit and your processes are not good and you are cost cutting in different places to save money, and you're owned by this parent company who probably wants you to be really cost efficient, all those things, then there's only so much he can do with that. And I think he has a lesson to learn now of how they're going to fix that, and he's going to have to go away and it was human error. It wasn't escalated. People tried to tell them it was happening. They then took ages to respond. So from a comms perspective, I think there's some lessons learned in the response times.
Yeah.
In the communications processes to government, and they have a responsibility to government and to the regulator. They sort of did that, but they sort of didn't. They got the numbers wrong multiple times.
Yeah.
All of those things. And I think it's like come back to the fundamentals of like try and understand what information you have, but leave the door open that, there's going to be more to come. And what is that regular cadence of updates that you're going to have to all those stakeholders, like not informing the South Australian government that people had died. Like that's a massive fail, right? But I also think like he didn't have a lot to work with to make that a positive message. Like it isn't going to be positive, right? It is, you've made a massive mistake and people have died.
But I think at that point, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm interested in your perspective as an outsider.
You're not always going to be able to spin a positive message out of it too. So that's the other thing. It's like, if you are dealing with a disaster, it's like the things that are most important, speed and transparency. Yeah. Like that's one. I think stakeholder prioritization, understanding like customers versus regulators versus media.
Yeah.
And then really understanding that people are dying. There's no win in this. No. Like, so technical language, or do we use human impact language? Like, are we an actual human being, and focus on that? I think there's a way that you can do that quickly with transparency to the right stakeholders and be a fucking human about it, really.
Yeah. Like he got asked, and this is like where it gets, he got asked, have you contacted the families? And he gave this really like legal answer, which is basically like, I'm taking advice on whether I should. It's my desire to do so. Like, should I, be able to, kind of thing.
I would love for him to say, but I will. Like,
yeah, or that like, I would also implore, like, find a legal way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, there is got to be a way that you could have contacted those families without necessarily getting into legal hot water. And even if you do, maybe you should be in legal hot water because it did happen and maybe you have to face the music on that one. But I just implore the lawyers, like, in that scenario, it is more powerful for him to have reached out and said, this never should have happened. I am so sorry for your loss. I know we cannot, nothing we can say will make that right. But, I wanted to let you know that I feel you, blah, 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 right? Like, because then the answer is absolutely. And of course I've contacted those families. I'm mortified that this has happened. It is a privilege and an honor to host the emergency line. And we failed.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that have been so refreshing?
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, the lawyers are going to be like, you can't say you failed. But like, I wish in these scenarios, there's a middle ground, and there is. Maybe it's not saying we failed, but there is a middle ground of, he could have contacted those families. They could have found a way to do that. Definitely.
Also, like, I want to go back to like how this happened too. Like thinking about like what'd you say, like a firewall update or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. Firewall upgrade. Yeah, it shouldn't have caused this issue.
Surely there is data on like how long this takes. What is the best time to do this? So like I would argue that like 2 to 3 a.m. is the witching hour. Like we all know nothing happens. Good happens.
Every mother knows that's when your baby gets really sick. No, I agree with you, but it actually shouldn't have caused, the actual upgrade should not have caused the outage. Apparently someone didn't follow a certain process as part of that. But the irony of all this is not the first time they've had an outage that affected Triple O.
Oh, so, no.
I just think from a brand perspective, they are going to really, really struggle to come back from this. I mean, separate to all this, Singtel, which owns Optus, They put the statement out, in the evening that was about that they're investigating, but their CEO didn't make a statement for another week.
Oh.
And like, that to me is terrible as well. Like, this is your parent company should have put out, that CEO should have put out a statement the very next day to say, we're very sorry this happened. We're looking into it. We're doing the investigation, but this should never have happened. Da, 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 da. It took him a week.
I understand that there is like legal language that needs to be followed in these types of scenarios. Like God knows how many pages of like rules you need to follow. But I wish that, or I hope that there's somebody in the room, and maybe that's the comms person, when they're putting that language together of like, imagine you are at home and you are trying to call 000. You've fallen down the stairs. You're 80 years old.
Yeah.
And you sit there for 32 hours, or whenever like they're able to get up and going and get everybody out there again. And you die. And what if that's your mom? And like that's how your mom died. Like suffering like that. Like that's like my nightmare.
Yeah.
And then that's how you respond as the CEO.
Well, one of the people that died, and they've since now said that potentially, it wasn't necessarily to do with the outage, but I thought it was an interesting anecdote. It was an 8-week-old baby died, but it was the grandma called 000 through and then couldn't get through, but immediately found like a Telstra line and called through Telstra and got through. So they think maybe that baby just died anyway. But imagine being that grandma as well. Like, you don't expect to call when you're already really anxious, right? You're calling 000 to then have to find another network to get through. Like, even that is terrible, right? And so I think you're right. Like, someone in the room needs to remind people of like the end impact of this, and then find the middle ground of like, maybe we need to wear some of this, find the line between, yes, not crossing it legally, but also kind of wearing some of that maybe you do cross it, because maybe this is one of those instances where you actually have to front and be more than you would normally. And I think from a brand perspective, you weigh up the risk, right? Like the risk of saying something too much and having legal action later down the line, or being too legal and too straight, and you come across as absolutely inhumane, and people will not come to your business. People will not choose Optus. We need to bring a bit more humanity back into corporate in these environments. And this is one example where it absolutely warrants. And again, like, I don't think he did a terrible job fronting up some of these press conferences. These are not easy to do. He had information. He did a good job. I don't think he did a great job, but I also think fundamentally there is some massive problems in that business. And, unfortunately, they also have this court case where they've been selling stuff to, intellectually disabled people, or First Nations people who cannot possibly, like, just horrible things.
Terrible.
And again, that's not necessarily him, right? And he's made some changes since then. But as a customer, I look at that and I go, you don't care about us. You've done this thing, you've done this thing. You like, and so they have a massive trust gap to fill now.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest lesson, is like, the trust is gone. The only way you can get that back is by being a human, is by being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that needs to be a conversation
in your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the technical language versus like real human language, like that's just a nail in the coffin. Like everyone's going to be held accountable to that type of stuff now.
Yeah. And I think like with all of these, I always want to caveat with like, we're not in the room.
Yeah.
We're not part of the inner sanctum. I think, my heart goes out to the Optus comms team and the corporate affairs team. I'm sure they're a very good corporate affairs team. I think you have to make decisions in tense environments. Like, I just want to call that out. But I think the other thing that's interesting, just as a side note, to wrap this up, they actually have hired now a crisis comms person who's quite well known here, and have brought him in. David Luff, I think his name is. I read that they've hired him now. So, I think, like, vote for the comms people, in the sense that it's like they've realized that they need some help. I think you know, sometimes with businesses, I think probably you should have had him on retainer before this all happened, you know, or someone like that as a business like that. You know, if that's the state of your business, you probably want to be ready before, like, hiring him now. Yeah, sure, it's a brand reputation rebuild, and they're probably
Yeah.
going to get him to help with that. But I think, you know, maybe a little too late.
I was just gonna say, like, is Optus financially going to be able to survive this between the pending, the like existing lawsuits, the
Yeah.
new ones that are going to happen from this, and then also, like, we all know how expensive a crisis comms person is
Oh,
in
yeah.
at that level.
Dude not going to be cheap. No way. No way. He's swooping on in with a high retainer.
No,
for
I mean,
sure.
get that bread, but still,
Yeah,
we
you
all
get
know the
that.
price of those people.
No, I agree. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to watch. I think, you know, they've got this parent company as well that I think has not necessarily operated in the right way either, and you know, it's coming across as quite cold. It'll be very interesting to see where they land. And obviously, like in Australia, there's not a huge amount of choice, right?
Yeah.
So like
Telstra,
Telstra,
Optus,
Optus, Vodafone, kind of.
Vodafone. Yeah, that's
That's
the other
it.
one.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be
That's
really
scary
interesting.
when I think about like 000 or 911 is like everyone has a cell phone, no one has a landline. So like you are tied to whatever carrier you
Whatever
have. I
carrier
hadn't
you're
even
on.
thought about how devastating that could be
I think a
before.
lot of people until this happened probably had not clocked,
Yeah.
because you're right, no one has a landline anymore.
Yeah. That's really, really scary.
It's horrific, you know?
Can we do like something funny to end this call off with? I
Yeah,
feel like
sure.
that was a tough one.
Look, we've got, yeah, it's been deep.
I should have talked about the rapture now.
Yeah, we should have raptured now, because that's way more positive.
Oh my God. Are you doing anything fun this weekend that you want to tell the group?
You know what? I've been watching this show on it's called Platonic. It's with like Rose Byrne.
I'm obsessed with it.
it's
Oh my
so good.
God. Yes.
It's so good, and I'm obsessed with Rose Byrne and the fact that her Australian accent comes through, and it's like, and she's just the best character in that show. Like I'm obsessed with her in it.
I love
Like how she's always trying to like talk cool and like, and I relate to that so hard. But anyway, I hadn't seen those like things that Seth Rogen hates in the show, like the food delivery like vehicles.
Oh yeah, the little robots that like drive around and deliver your food.
I was like, what is that? And I didn't kind of get the joke, and I didn't know what they were for a little bit. But yeah, so I don't know. Are they only in LA?
Though they're all over. Yeah, like any
wow.
kind of big city. I mean, they're not here in Bend.
Sure.
But like
what-
San Francisco, LA, you'd see them.
So they just have food in them and they deliver food.
It's like Amazon delivery, dude.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, no, we don't have those here.
Yeah. No, Rose Byrne is a gem. Her hair, I'm obsessed with her hair. When I cut my hair at first, as you can tell, I'm like growing it out now because it didn't work for me. But every time I saw her hair, even when we were watching the episode last night, the latest one, I looked at Scott and I was like, see, look how cute her hair is. Like, why isn't my hair? Why isn't my bob doing that? Why isn't my hair doing that?
I'm gonna say, I feel like she has quite fine hair, and that is
you're right. Scott says
Wilson has the mane of a prestige dressage horse. I feel like she's got fine kind of not a lot of hair on that head.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, Scott says I have scarecrow hair, which is why this does not work.
Like I don't think you could do the Rose Byrne hairstyle that she has.
I tried my damnedest. It did not work out for me.
Yes. But that is a great show. That's a plug for that show if anyone is. It's fabulous.
I laugh out loud every single episode.
Okay, like literally out loud.
Good. Yeah,
so
it's very good. Okay, that's a better way to end it.
There you go.
You guys, thank you for listening. We would love, I'm going to do another like call it. So give us topics, give us hot takes, give us things to mull over. We will always kind of talk about what's new, what's happening in the news. But if there's something that we're missing and you're like, why haven't they talked about this yet? Please write in and let us know.
Or if you want to come on and do the hot take yourself, we will happily do that as well.
Please pitch a hot take to us and we'll let you come on and do it with us. We're going to have Sanka on to do the Tylenol conversation because she was trying to give me tips on what to say. And I was like, I'm going to fumble this so fucking hard. Let's just have her on.
Yeah.
So I think, it'll be great. And, you can follow us at on TikTok. Sorry, my brain is capitulating. You can follow us on TikTok or YouTube or on Instagram at Smart and Public Pod, or you can email us and let us know what you want us to talk about at hello@smartandpublicpod.com. But you know what? We'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you. And
Bye.
goodbye.